Hey there! In this video, we're going to discuss the topic of flaky tests. What are they, and how do you eradicate them forever? Hello, my name's Greg Paskal, and I'm here with the craft of testing. I'm always excited to talk with you, our audience, about important testing topics, and really how to help our community grow. So flaky test, they're making the rounds again. It's like we don't hear about them for a while, then they bubble up again. Every few years, it generally comes around when there's a new tool bubbling up. And that's exactly what we're having right now. There's a new tool. It's been around for a little while, but Cypress is making the rounds. And because of that, I'm not surprised we're hearing more people talk about flaky test. At the moment, the new Luke Skywalker is Cypress, and the new Darth Vader is Selenium. And this generally is a cycle that our community goes through from time to time when a new tool shows up. You know, the old tool becomes kind of the nemesis and the new one becomes the hero. And it's important to know that in the craft of testing and in what we do, and that is that our discipline is always evolving. And there's always something new around the corner. And we, by nature as people, generally are always attracted to the latest shiny thing. That's just the nature of it. Technologists are even worse about this. There's always something that we get our eye on and we think, that's it. If I only had that, that would solve all my problems. In a way, in the automated test space, the same thing happens. And generally the nemesis or the kind of the evil Vader of that moment is flaky test and the tools we've been using before and how they introduced flaky test and how the new tool is going to save the day. So this is going to be a great video to discuss that in the real world and really try to help you get your arms around it. First of all, let's kick off, what in the world is a flaky test? I've heard many variations of it, and I decided to put some time in it today and try to come up with a really good definition that we could get our arms around. A flaky test is any test that produces inconsistent results while you execute that test against the identical code base, testing some feature or function. Well, here's the secret. There are two things that are really the source of flaky test. The first one is what is called a flawed locator approach or a locator strategy. And the second one has to do with an immature synchronization strategy. I want you to realize I said nothing about a tool. While I hear that often, like Capybara is the reason we have flaky test, or Selenium's the reason we have flaky test, or before long you'll hear Cypress is the reason we have flaky test. Flaky tests have nothing to do with the tool itself, and they have everything to do with the techniques we use in writing automated code. Isn't that great to know? You've probably invested time, maybe years, in the tool you're using. And the great news is that tool can be as stable as the latest tools coming out if you approach and you apply the techniques I'm going to teach you. So first of all, let's really talk about the locator strategy, okay? Locators, in my experience, I've been doing this a long time. Believe it or not, over 35 years. Now, when we started, we didn't have to solve locator problems in the same way we do now. But to be honest, probably in the last 20 years, the locator problem has had to have been solved pretty much the same way. Nothing's really new under the sun, right? So when it comes to locators need to be testable during the time of design. I want to say that again. Your locators need to be testable at the time you're designing the test. Now that's very doable, believe it or not. In my case, I use XPath exclusively, and XPath has really got a bad rap out there, and I created a whole video around this topic. But XPaths to me are really an exceptional way to develop locators. Non-flaky locators, by the way, really solid ones. What's great about testable locators is they're testable in a tool like Chrome DevTools. They're programmatic in the approach we take at it, so we're not working through a GUI to develop a locator. We're developing it like we do code, and they're solid and they're very reliable when they're done right. And you know what's great about it? They can be done in Selenium, XPaths can be done in Cypress, XPaths can be done in lots of different automated tools. Now, I'll give you a little backstory on that. I learned how to develop great locators using, at the time, it was initially Mercury's tool, Windrunner, eventually owned by Hewlett Packard as QTP. And I learned how to use their object spy very well. That was just getting my arms around a great locator approach. And when I started to get into Selenium, I realized that same approach could be applied in Selenium using XPaths. And so I brought that very solid locator approach into it, and I've had the same level of stability and really solid automation ever since. Now, there are some really awful XPaths example online, and so if you're hearing me and you're cringing at the idea of XPaths, you probably have heard some pretty lousy examples online. I'm not going to lie to you. Most things you hear about XPaths online are really awful. And they generally involve right-clicking on some object and allowing Chrome to decide what the XPath should be. You got to move away from that approach. If you're using it now, I can guarantee you are going to have flaky tests. That is not a solid way to do it. And you're going to get garbage locators. I want you to see my YouTube video on this topic. You can find it on my YouTube channel at craftofTesting.com, and look for the video that's labeled Basic XPath by Example. You got to check that out. I did that a couple months ago, and it's already provided some great feedback for folks and tools to go forward in a solid locator approach. So no point repeating all of that. You can find that in that video, and make sure to pass it on to the rest of your automation team. So out of the two things you need to get around flaky tests, the first is locators. We've gone over a few things on that. Now let's go and move into our second thing, which is the area of synchronization. Now there is an art. There's an art to knowing the state of your application, the state of an object, the state of a page, the state of an API. And that's what I call synchronization. All right? We do this all the time. We're always looking for the state of something so we know when it's safe to move on, right? If we're driving down the road and we come to a red light, we wait for green to know it's safe to move on. If we're driving down the road, we see yellow coming in, we know we better slow down because red's coming up. When we walk and when we interact with the world, there are locators all the time, or synchronizations all the time that help us know that a state is changing, and the same is true when it comes to test automation. Now, don't get lost in meaningless topics. There is a lot of nonsense around implicit and explicit waiting and those sort of things. Those are great if you really have a lot of time and nothing better to do. This isn't what I'm talking about. Maybe at the very core of things, we will get to some of that, but that isn't really going to lead you to more solid automation when it comes to your synchronization approach. But what will be are 4 fundamental synchronization approaches. So take note and write these down, because this is going to make a difference in your test automation. The first one is what I call exist. What that means is at this moment in time, does an object exist on a page? Let's just talk about a basic web page. Does an object exist? Does a button exist? Does a title of a page exist? There's something there. At this exact moment in time, does it exist? And when I get back from my code, does it tell me true or false, pass or fail on that? The second one is at this exact moment in time, does something not exist? So the first one is exist, and the second one is not exist. You need a method or an approach in your automation framework to let you determine at this moment, does something not exist? All right, you got those two. Now the other two are similar to that. The next one is wait to exist. Now this method or this approach in your framework should say, wait up till this length of time for something to exist and let me know if it showed up. And if it does, give me some indicator through a true or false or pass or fail sort of thing that I'm able to move forward. Now, I bake these in to my core functions and methods around interacting with an object or interacting with text that needs to be put into a field. I have these baked in already. So, but I look for certain state before I go ahead and work on those things. For instance, the most basic is the page all the way up and ready to go before I move forward? So that's the third one. So our first one is exist. Second is not exist. Our third is wait to exist. And our fourth, similar to this, is wait to not exist. Now, this one is one you're not going to think of probably right out of the gate. But did you realize that certain things need to go away as an indicator that it's time to move on in your automation? This might be wait for a dialog box to not exist anymore. as a form of synchronization to let you know now's time for me to move forward in my automation. So instead of putting just hard-coded waits or sleeps, those are useless. If you're using that as your synchronization strategy, I promise you have flaky tests. Because let's face it, when you put just a hard-coded wait or sleep in things, you're basically saying, my best guess is 5 seconds. Whether that needs to be 5 seconds or 15, your code will wait 5, and then it'll move on. That is a very unreliable way of doing synchronization, and we've all done it. So there's no shame in it, but that is a step that you need to grow through and move into these 4 synchronization approaches. So our fourth, again, is wait to not exist. I'm going to go over them one more time. Our first one is exist. Our second is not exist. Our third is wait to exist. And our fourth is wait to not exist. You need to master those. That's what's going to lead you to build exceptional world-class test automation. And when you watch it move through your script, you're just going to be amazed how beautiful it looks, working through it. Master these 4, and I promise you'll begin to say goodbye to flaky tests. So in a recap, remember, don't abandon your tools just because the next one comes out and promises that it's going to remove all your flaky test problems. That is not the case. The next tool will likely have the same problems, and so your current tool probably has a great capacity to not have flaky tests if you can solve these particular problems. So flaky test is an implementation problem, not a tool problem. All right. Remember to pursue XPath and watch my XPath video. That's going to help you to have a good handle on that. And pursue the 4 XPath approaches, or the 4 synchronization approaches I've just shared with you, and you'll really get these nailed down well. So apply these 2 critical techniques and be done with flaky tests forever. Like anything, there's a craft that's involved in the work that we do, so you've got to become an exceptional craftsman. You've got to own the space around locators, you got to become an expert in it, and you've got to own the space around synchronization. Be an expert in those things. It will make a difference in the work that you do. So check out the show notes in the description, and go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'm adding new videos all the time, and I love coming up with things that I think are really going to enable and help you. So remember, you can find it at Craft of Testing. That'll take you right to my YouTube channel. And also, I want to tell you about some cool Craft of Testing swag that I've been creating. I've now got 3 or 4 t-shirts out there, and you can check them out at shop.craftoftesting.com and wear a shirt with pride that you're pursuing the craft of testing well. So this is Greg Paskal signing off, and I'm encouraging you to pursue the craft of testing well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next go-around. Bye-bye. I would love to connect with you, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find at Greg Paskal on LinkedIn. For those of you who are in the automation world, take a look at my book, Test Automation in the Real World. You can find more about that at realworldtestautomation.com.